The afternoon sunlight spilled through my kitchen window, turning the wooden table into a stage of gold. I cradled the phone against my ear, my voice bubbling with excitement I could barely contain. "I can't wait to celebrate 5 years with Robert next week," I told Melissa, smiling so hard it hurt my cheeks. My heart was light, fluttering like it did when we first met. I imagined candlelight, laughter, maybe a toast to the life we'd built. For once, I let myself feel safe in my marriage. But then, silence. A silence that stretched too long, pressing heavy against my chest. "Melissa?" I asked, shifting uneasily. She wasn't usually like this. She was warm, quick to laugh, never one to hesitate. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked like fragile glass. "Kate, I thought you two were done." My smile froze, and the warmth in my chest turned to ice. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my throat suddenly dry. "Robert and I are fine. We've never even thought about separating." But Melissa's sigh carried a weight I didn't understand, until she said it. "Last week I saw Robert at Bella's bistro, with another woman. He wasn't wearing his wedding ring. And Kate, it wasn't just dinner. He kissed her." The world tilted under me, but instead of crying, something inside me hardened, sharpening like glass. For a moment, I just stared at the flowers on the table, the ones Robert had given me last week, their petals already beginning to curl at the edges. My chest felt tight, but I refused to let the tears fall. I wasn't going to break down, not in front of Melissa. My voice was barely steady when I asked, "Are you sure it was him?" I wanted her to laugh, to say she'd made a mistake. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Melissa's voice grew softer, but firmer. "Kate, I saw him with my own eyes." He leaned across the table and kissed her like she was the only woman in the world. And Kate, he looked happy, too happy. The words stung like salt in an open wound. My knees wobbled beneath me and I sank into the chair, gripping the edge like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Inside, my heart screamed. 5 years of anniversaries, promises, and whispered late-night dreams suddenly felt like a cruel joke. I thought of the nights he'd come home late, the sudden excuses, the way he sometimes turned his phone face down on the table. All those little red flags I had brushed aside now stood in front of me like neon signs. And in that quiet kitchen, while Melissa's worried breathing crackled through the phone, I made a decision I never thought I'd have to make. "I can't believe this," I murmured, my fingers tracing the rim of my coffee mug as if the porcelain could anchor me. My mind kept replaying Melissa's words: Robert, Bella's bistro, no wedding ring, the kiss. The image I had of my husband shattered quietly inside me, leaving sharp edges I didn't know how to hold. But instead of collapsing into sobs, I felt something colder rising, a strange, steady calm. Melissa's voice was full of guilt, almost apologetic. "I didn't know if I should tell you. I didn't want to hurt you, Kate." I closed my eyes, inhaled slowly, and steadied myself. "You did the right thing," I told her. My heart was bruised, but my pride was still intact. And in that fragile space between heartbreak and fury, a spark of clarity lit up. I straightened my shoulders, set my mug down with a quiet thud, and let a small, deliberate smile spread across my face. "Then let's make sure he has dinner there again," I said, my voice calm but laced with steel. "With us." Melissa gasped on the other end, her breath catching in shock. But me? For the first time in days, I felt something that wasn't pain. I felt power. And that was just the beginning of my plan. That evening, I walked into our home wearing the same smile Robert had seen for years, but this time it was a mask. He was on the couch, pretending to scroll through work emails, acting like the man I thought I knew. I kissed his cheek, my lips barely brushing his skin, and listened as he told me the usual story about late meetings and extra reports. I nodded, as though I believed every word, when in truth, every syllable stung like a needle. I stirred the pot on the stove, forcing laughter at his jokes, letting him think I was the same Kate who used to hang on his every sentence. Inside, though, my mind was already racing. Images of him at that restaurant, Bella's bistro of all places, kept flashing before me. My friend had no reason to lie, no motive to hurt me. The puzzle pieces were fitting together, and they painted a picture I could no longer ignore. So I turned to him with an expression so calm it scared even me. "You know," I said lightly, as though it were nothing, "our anniversary's coming up. Why don't we go out to Bella's Bistro on Friday? Melissa can join us too. I'd love to thank her for reconnecting with me after all these years." The fork in his hand froze halfway to his mouth. He blinked, forcing a smile, and replied, "That place? Sure. Whatever you want." His voice cracked just slightly, but I caught it. I always caught the tiny slips, the small giveaways he thought I wouldn't notice. He tried to mask it by asking about my day, about what Melissa and I talked about, but his eyes darted to the TV like he couldn't stand to look at me. That flicker of panic told me everything I needed to know. He remembered Bella's Bistro too. I smiled and played along, spooning pasta onto our plates as if nothing had changed. Inside, I was rehearsing lines, imagining how Friday would unfold. Every detail mattered now. The reservation, the table, even the way I'd invite Melissa so it seemed casual, harmless. If Robert was going to put on a show for his mistress, I'd make sure he had the biggest audience possible. Later that night, as he slept soundly beside me, I stared at the ceiling. My heart ached, yes, but it also beat with a strange new rhythm, part grief, part adrenaline. I realized I wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. In fact, I was craving it. If Robert wanted to keep secrets, I'd drag them into the light. The stage was set. Now I just needed the perfect moment to raise the curtain. The next morning, I brewed coffee as if nothing was wrong, humming a tune while Robert shuffled in, still half asleep. He kissed the top of my head and reached for his mug, completely unaware that every move he made felt like a performance on borrowed time. "Long week ahead," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. I smiled sweetly and nodded. Let him think he was fooling me. That would make the reveal even sweeter. Melissa called later that afternoon, her voice trembling with nerves. "Kate, are you sure about this? I don't want to make things worse." I could almost picture her pacing, her fingers twisting that gold bracelet she never took off. "Worse?" I asked quietly. "Melissa, it's already worse. You just gave me the truth. Now I need him to hear it too, face to face." She went silent, but I knew she'd stand by me. She always did. As the week wore on, I played the role of the perfect wife. I laughed at Robert's stories, folded his shirts, even ironed the one he always wore to that restaurant. Every move I made was calculated, every smile a rehearsal for Friday night. And though my heart felt like a cracked vase, I held it together. Because soon, very soon, I'd let Robert trap himself in the very place he thought was his secret escape. Friday evening arrived draped in city lights, and my heart beat in a rhythm that wasn't quite fear, wasn't quite excitement. It was something sharper, something alive. As we pulled up to Bella's Bistro, the same place Melissa had whispered about, I felt my stomach twist into knots. The restaurant looked beautiful from the outside, glowing with candles flickering in every window, as if it were mocking me. Robert's hand rested on the small of my back, the same hand Melissa swore she saw cupping another woman's face. I could feel the tension humming in him before we even walked through the door. His smile was forced, too tight at the corners, and his eyes darted around the room like a man scanning for danger. I followed his gaze, wondering if she was already here, waiting. The irony wasn't lost on me. This place that had once symbolized love for couples like us now felt like a theater of betrayal. And I was about to let the curtains rise. Melissa was already seated when we arrived, her posture straight, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her wine glass. The moment our eyes met, she gave me a look that said, "Are you sure?" I nodded, my lips curving in a calm, deliberate smile, though my heart thundered beneath my dress. Robert kissed her on the cheek politely, but I saw it, the flicker of guilt in his eyes, the stiffness in his body. He was bracing himself, and I was ready to watch him squirm. The waiter led us to a table near the window, the same corner Melissa had described. My breath caught for a second, but I kept my composure, smoothing down my dress as if nothing was wrong. Robert shifted in his seat, tugging at his collar like it was strangling him. I leaned back, watching him fidget, and for the first time, I wasn't blinded by love. I was studying him, the way you'd study a stranger. Melissa tried to lighten the air with small talk about work, about old times, about a vacation she'd taken to Italy. I played along, sipping my wine, but every word felt like we were circling something much bigger. Robert laughed at all the right places, but his eyes kept darting toward the bar. He was waiting, I realized. Waiting for her. The thought made me want to laugh out loud. I let him squirm a little longer before I leaned in, my hand brushing against Melissa's. "You know," I said casually, my eyes fixed on Robert's. "Why don't you tell Robert what you told me?" The color drained from his face instantly, like someone had pulled a plug and let all the blood rush out. Melissa straightened her shoulders, her nerves giving way to a quiet determination. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker, as we both turned our gaze on him. Melissa didn't flinch. She looked Robert straight in the eye, her voice steady now, no trace of hesitation. "I saw you right here, Robert. You weren't wearing your ring. You held her hand across this very table, whispering things into her ear, and then you kissed her. Not a friendly kiss. The kind of kiss that leaves no room for doubt." Her words were knives, each one sinking deeper, and I watched him shrink with every syllable. Robert chuckled, the sound brittle and hollow. "Melissa, come on. You must have mistaken me for someone else. Maybe it was dark, maybe—" But even as he spoke, his voice betrayed him. His fingers drummed nervously against the glass, his eyes flickering toward me, searching for forgiveness, or maybe a way out. I tilted my head, letting him twist in his own web. I wasn't going to rescue him this time. With one slow movement, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I placed it gently on the table, screen glowing with the evidence I had uncovered. My thumb hovered, ready to reveal everything, but I didn't hit play yet. Not yet. I wanted him to feel the silence pressing down on him, the weight of truth hanging in the air. And as I watched his jaw tighten, I knew this dinner was only the opening act. The moment my phone lit up, Robert's face twisted. He leaned forward, his voice low but sharp. "What are you doing, Kate?" His smile was gone, replaced by the kind of panic a man feels when the walls start closing in. I tapped the screen, letting a preview of the text messages glow between us like a neon confession. The silence from the surrounding tables was deafening, though I could feel eyes turning toward us. "Don't," he hissed, his jaw clenching, but I met his stare with a calm I didn't know I had. "Why not?" I asked, tilting my head like I was genuinely curious. My finger slid across the screen, pulling up the thread of late-night messages. His words, not mine. Words dripping with promises of stolen moments and whispered affection. Every sentence was a dagger, but I smiled anyway, as though his betrayal were nothing more than spilled wine on a white tablecloth. Melissa shifted beside me, her hands trembling, but her eyes never left Robert's. "I told her the truth because she deserved to know," she said, her voice growing louder now. The man I had once thought unshakable was sweating under the weight of the moment, his facade crumbling with every second. And in that fragile silence, with strangers watching and Robert's lies unraveling, I realized this was just the first cut. He reached across the table, his hand brushing against mine, but I pulled back before his skin could touch me. "Kate, it wasn't like that," he stammered, his voice rising as though volume could mask the truth. "She misunderstood. It was just business." His words sounded rehearsed, flimsy, like a child caught sneaking cookies before dinner. The more he spoke, the more pathetic he looked. I lifted my glass, watching the wine catch the candlelight, pretending I was bored. Inside, though, my heart was pounding so loud I was sure the whole restaurant could hear it. "Business?" I repeated, raising a brow. "Is that what you call pressing your lips against another woman's in the middle of a crowded restaurant?" My tone was soft, almost gentle, but the blow landed harder than any scream ever could. His eyes darted again, this time toward the entrance. And that's when I realized what he was so afraid of. He wasn't just worried about me or Melissa. He was waiting for her. Any second now she might walk through those doors, and he knew it. He was trapped, pinned like an insect under glass, and I wasn't about to let him wriggle free. The night was only heating up, and I was ready to watch him burn. Robert grabbed his napkin and dabbed his forehead, but the sweat kept coming. His words stumbled out of his mouth like loose stones rolling down a hill. "Kate, you don't understand. She's just a client, nothing more. I had to make her feel comfortable." His excuses tangled in the air, weak and laughable, and I could see the doubt flicker in Melissa's eyes turn into disgust. I set my phone flat on the table and tapped the screen again. The text glowed brighter this time, his words explicit and undeniable. Little love notes, promises of weekends away, secrets about me he had no right to share. His lips parted as he read them, like maybe he could rewrite his own lies in real time. But the damage was done. The guests at nearby tables were leaning in, whispering, eyes wide with curiosity. I lifted my glass high, my hand steady, my smile sharp enough to cut glass. 5 years of marriage, I said, my voice rising above the quiet clink of cutlery. And this is how you celebrate. By cheating at the very table we're sitting at now. Heads turned. A murmur spread through the restaurant like wildfire. Robert's face turned crimson, his eyes dropping to his lap. And as the room's attention closed in on him, I knew the final blow hadn't even landed yet. I placed my napkin on the table, the soft fabric landing with a finality that felt louder than his stammering excuses. For a second, I just looked at him, the man I once thought I'd grow old with. His shoulders slumped, his lips pressed tight, his eyes begging me not to finish what I'd started. But it was too late. The truth was already out, bleeding into every corner of the restaurant. Around us, forks paused in midair. Couples leaned closer to each other, whispering behind menus as if they were front-row spectators at a play. I took a slow sip of wine, savoring it, letting the bold flavor coat my tongue like courage. Then I leaned forward, my voice calm but carrying across the room. "You didn't just betray me, Robert. You made a fool of yourself. And now everyone sees it." Melissa's hand found mine under the table, a quiet anchor in the storm. Robert opened his mouth, but no words came out, just a strangled sound, like someone choking on their own lies. For the first time in years, I felt taller, lighter, as though the weight of his deceit had shifted onto his own shoulders. I stood, smoothing my dress with deliberate grace, ready to end this scene on my terms. And the night, oh, it was far from over. Robert reached for me again, but I stepped back, my chair scraping against the polished floor. The sound echoed like a warning shot, and I could almost feel the entire restaurant holding its breath. "Kate, wait!" he pleaded, his voice cracking under the weight of panic. His eyes searched mine, desperate for forgiveness, desperate for me to play the forgiving wife one more time. But that woman no longer existed. I turned to Melissa, who looked both furious and heartbroken. She gave him a look that could slice steel. "I didn't want to believe it either," she said, her words trembling with a mix of sorrow and rage. "But I saw you, Robert. I saw everything." His hand balled into a fist against the table, but even that attempt at defiance seemed weak, almost pitiful. The mask he wore had shattered completely now. I leaned down, my face inches from his, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "This dinner was supposed to be our celebration," I whispered, "but now it's your performance. So smile, darling. The whole room is watching." His eyes darted around again, catching the stares, the hushed gossip, the waiters exchanging glances. And in that fragile pause, I felt the shift. He was the one drowning, not me. I straightened, letting the silence do the work for me. The clinking glasses, the low hum of whispered conversations. Suddenly, it all felt like background music to his downfall. I didn't need to raise my voice, didn't need to throw a scene. His shame was enough, painted across his face for the world to see. I simply laid my wedding ring beside his plate, its gold band catching the glow of the candles. "Happy anniversary," I said softly, a half smile tugging at my lips. The words weren't bitter, not anymore. They were final, like closing the last page of a book I'd read too many times. I pushed back my chair with deliberate calm, the legs scraping the floor as if to announce my departure. Melissa rose beside me, her presence a quiet shield, her hand brushing mine with a strength I didn't know I needed. We walked out together, our heels clicking across the marble floor, leaving Robert behind with his lies and the whispers of strangers circling around him like vultures. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel the weight of his humiliation pressing against the walls of that restaurant, trapping him there while I stepped into the night. And as the door closed behind me, I felt the first breath of freedom, though I knew the real story was only beginning. Months have passed, and the storm that once raged in my chest has finally settled into something calmer, steadier. Robert is just a shadow in the background now, his name whispered in hushed tones around town, his reputation fractured beyond repair. People cross the street when they see him, as if betrayal has left a stain they don't want on their shoes. And me? I don't carry his shame anymore. That burden was his, not mine. I poured my energy into myself piece by piece. The house that once felt like a cage has become my sanctuary. Every room touched by my hands, repainted, reimagined, reborn. I started the little business I used to daydream about, and for the first time in years, I wake up with purpose instead of dread. There's a freedom in creating something that's mine, untouched by his lies. Melissa and I found our rhythm again, as though no time had passed since we were girls sharing secrets on her bedroom floor. She became more than a friend. She became my anchor, my witness, my partner in starting over. One evening, we found ourselves back at Bella's Bistro, this time by choice. As the waiter poured our wine, I felt the corners of my mouth curve into a smile, knowing this place no longer belonged to Robert's betrayal, but to my own rebirth. I watched Melissa laugh across the table, her eyes sparkling in the candlelight, and for once I wasn't comparing this night to what I had lost. I wasn't imagining Robert's hands or wondering who else he might be with. I was present, fully here, savoring every sip, every shared memory, every inside joke that belonged only to us. It felt like reclaiming a part of myself I had long buried under compromise and silence. There were whispers in the restaurant again, but this time they weren't about me. They were about him, the man sitting alone at some bar, the man who had traded his vows for a moment of attention. People no longer saw me as the betrayed wife. They saw me as the woman who stood up, who walked away with her dignity intact, and that quiet respect filled me with more warmth than any anniversary toast ever could. As I leaned back in my chair, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The laughter around me no longer hurt. It joined with my own, soft and genuine. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for Robert to show up, wasn't holding my breath for his approval. I had already taken back my power, and in this very place where my world had nearly shattered, I was building something new. But little did I know, the universe still had more in store for me. Melissa raised her glass, her smile gentle but filled with pride. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice steady now, no trace of the hesitation from that first phone call. I clinked my glass against hers, the sound ringing like a promise, crisp and clear. The wine was sweet on my lips, but the victory was sweeter. For once, I wasn't celebrating a man. I was celebrating myself. I glanced around Bella's Bistro, the same velvet booths, the same flickering candles, the same walls that had once witnessed my humiliation. But now, instead of pain, I felt something unexpected. Freedom, strength, even a little joy. This place wasn't a scar anymore. It was proof that I had survived, that I had the courage to walk away and not look back. And in that moment, I realized I had taken more than my dignity with me. I had taken back my life. I leaned closer to Melissa, lowering my glass with a soft laugh that came straight from the heart. "You know," I whispered, watching the light dance across the table, "he thought Bella's Bistro was his playground." I let the words linger, savoring them. Then, with a smile that felt like the sunrise, I added, I made it his stage.